Hello everyone, Professor Krizluk here. So I just wanted to give a quick update about the Israel-Iran conflict. And so over the past couple days, we've kind of wondered how Iran's allies would respond to the U.S.'s attack on Iranian nuclear facilities. So there's been discussion, concerns about would Iranian allies come to the aid of Iran. And the big one that people have been paying attention to is Russia. And so I just wanted to talk about that for a minute. But first, I wanted to talk about a response that a statement that the Russian Foreign Ministry put out yesterday regarding the U.S.'s strikes on Iran. And so normally I don't just read things on here, but I think it's worth me reading the first two paragraphs. So the Foreign Ministry statement in connection with the U.S. strikes on Iran state, Russia resolutely condemns the United States strikes on several nuclear facilities in the Islamic Republic of Iran, carried out in the early hours of June 22nd following recent attacks by Israel. The document continues, this reckless decision to launch missile and aerial strikes on the territory of a sovereign state, regardless of the justifications offered, constitutes a blatant violation of international law, the UN Charter, and relevant resolutions by the UN Security Council, which has consistently and unequivocally deemed such actions unacceptable. Particularly concerning is the fact that the strikes were executed by a permanent member of the UN Security Council. So the reason I wanted to read those two paragraphs in full is because in international relations, sometimes we see a lot of hypocrisy. And here, Russia condemning the West, regardless of how you feel about U.S.'s strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, or regardless of how you feel about Israel's strikes across Iran. Russia has been in a conflict with their sovereign neighbor since 2014 and since the full-scale invasion. So Russia clearly violated the sovereignty of Ukraine. And so for such a statement to come out from Russia maybe isn't shocking, because we see a lot of statements coming out of Russia that just seem to go in the face of reality, we can say, in the face of reality. So we've been waiting for a response of how Russia would either support Iran or seemingly step back. And although the statement is kind of farcical, and if we pay attention to world events, we know Russia engages in actions in sovereign nations around them. But Russia didn't come out and say that they were going to support Iran in any other ways. So we know this morning Iran targeted U.S. military sites in Qatar and Iraq, but we haven't seen anything about Russia supporting Iran in any other ways. So we know Iran has supported the Russians in their war in Ukraine. Drones have been coming out of Tehran, coming out of Iran, going to Russia to be used in the war in Ukraine. But the early indications are that the Russians might not be escalating the conflict or escalating their support for Iran. And it's still early. And importantly to think about, we don't know what will happen behind the scenes. So there's a lot of discussions about how much damage did the U.S. strikes actually do to the Iranian nuclear facilities. That night that the strikes occurred, President Trump came out and said that the nuclear sites were obliterated. But then the Pentagon, the Department of Defense, kind of gave a more nuanced, we'll have to wait and see what the damage is. And so we don't really know yet how far set back the Iranian nuclear program is. With that said, one thing that could happen is that the Iranian nuclear program could now go even more underground and even more secret. And so it might seem like these strikes were a success today, but down the road, Iran could do a nuclear test. Ben Rhodes on Pod Save the World was talking about his concerns that the Iranian nuclear program will go quiet and it'll seem like a short-term success and then will emerge down the street. Some folks at the Bulwark were saying a similar thing, that is a concern they have, that the nuclear program will just go underground. And we don't know. Maybe the Russians will help with that development. So when we think about who's coming to the aid of Iran, right now it doesn't look like anyone. But we don't know what the Russians and the Chinese and others are saying to the Iranians behind the scenes. So definitely something we'll keep an eye on. I just wanted to read you this foreign ministry statement because it kind of... the hypocrisy is kind of unsettling. But okay, thank you.